This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I see already Renate joining, so I think that we can start.
Hello, yes. How many people do we have?
By now we have 49 people.
Okay.
You can see that now 50. it's joining progress.
How do I get to the chat? Wait a minute, it doesn't show. It shows here.
On the top panel, you'll see.
Okay. And we have 51 participants.
51 now.
Okay. Perfect. But do you want to start, Roberto, with 2 sentences?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
I as moderator.
Great.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues of the European and Central Asian region. Good morning or good evening to all of you that are joining from other regions. I don't know if there is anyone from other regions. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Renate, our IOE Regional Vice President for Europe and Central Asia, for being the one driving this digital conference. Just the basic message that we send every time that we have a digital conference: mute your microphones except for the speakers at the time of their corresponding intervention. That's important, okay? Please mute yourself. We'll have also some of our team also muting yourself in case you don't do it, but please, that's important. If you have a weak connection to internet, normally we recommend to turn off your cameras. I mean, the speakers, of course, it's good normally to see them, and we are also happy to see your face. That gives us a sense of more reality. But if you have a weak connection, it's better to switch off the cameras. Another element is the chat function, because that helps us to optimize time. So whenever you want to raise a question, and we encourage you to do it, please use the channel that you have on your right side, so that we are able at the end of the different interventions to sum up the different questions, and Pierre will help on that, summing up the different questions so that the different panelists and intervenants can raise them and can answer them. I just want to say, I mean, as Secretary General of IOE, I don't have to explain the unprecedented times that we are living. Many people are saying even that this is not the first time we have a president like this, but what is clear is that the world as it is now is changing drastically, and back to normal is something that will not be so normal as we have been looking at it in the recent times. So there is a new era. I think that is a new era, and we'll have to be able to not predict, because that's impossible, but to cope with it. The goal of our digital conference is to share, and that's very important, to share your experiences, to share your perspectives, and to help you as IOE with responses. And we are already doing things, you know that. We have a dedicated website, and you have a team. It's not just me, it's also Matthias Jones, Pierre, Luis Rodrigo, many of the members of IOE working on this business action COVID-19 section of the website of IOE. It's a platform where we have information relevant for you, but not just information on measures from governments, but also information on your assessment of how these measures is working, or how these measures will be working or not working. This qualitative element is already there, and we will keep feeding that for your interest and for your service. Just bear in mind that we have already been working on the health and safety angle. We have already a product for you. We are working also on another product based on a different digital conference that we have on economic advocacy. I mean, the measures from an economic perspective that are working and are not working, the helicopter money, and will provide you a kind of outcome or guidance based in our exchange already 3 weeks ago. We are also working on employment-related measures, and we are producing also an outcome which could be of help to you, and that will be on the website very soon, but it's based also on another digital conferences. And we are planning others digital conference, also not to overburden you with many digital conferences, but basically trying to also bring some critical points which can be useful. The next one perhaps will be on productivity, and how productivity approach can help also for a quick recovery. Of course, we have regional exchange, and we thought that that was more than the time to have it on Europe and Central Asia. Perhaps one of the main reasons is because Europe is the most affected continent, putting healthcare systems through the region under massive pressure and causing more than 100,000 deaths to date. And of course, the impact on the industry and the services is clearly very, very severe, no? And affecting both the supply area and also the demand. So I don't want to take more time. I just want to tell you that the IOE Secretariat is at your disposal, and will keep also providing services based on what you are providing us. And we are more than happy to answer your questions or your requests in terms of measures that are being put into place and guidance that can be helping you. Thank you so much, Renate, for giving me the floor, and now I give it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Roberto. And I'm trying to switch on my camera. It's very unusual for me because I normally switch it off for reasons of sound quality. But again, welcome. I see there are already 66 people on the line, and we have had altogether 70 participants, most of them from our European and Central Asian member organizations, but also from other regions, and also from companies, from our partner companies, from the GUN, from the GOSH, from ILO ACTEMP, and also Maxime from Business Europe is already here or will join us shortly to listen into this discussion, this conversation. So thank you very much indeed. Well, I think the main message I want to give in my introduction is that in this crisis, of course, this is the moment for national policies, for taking emergency measures, which are by definition national, but we must, in the IOE and also in our other international organizations, we must make sure that these national measures are actually appropriate, that they are efficient, that they help companies to survive this period of crisis. And a lot of this also refers to helping employees, of course, surviving this crisis. But also that we don't forget about the international cooperation and the international trade and economic development, which we have experienced for the last years, and which has been to the benefit of all of us. So again, let me say hello and thank you to IOE for having taken up this issue extremely proactively. Really congratulations to Roberto and to the leadership, also Matthias as our Deputy Secretary General, who is in charge of the European and Central Asian region, and also to Pierre, who has set up this digital conference. So thank you very much, Pierre, for this idea and also for this wonderful arrangement. And of course, Monique, if I'm not mistaken, you are again the master of the technology and of the ceremony. So great thanks to Monique for all her work.
I'm here.
Of course, we can't do without you, Monique. And so with this, I think I will immediately turn to the different measures and the country cases. Maybe 2-3 words on what happens in Germany. The number of infections in Germany, when you put it in relation to the population as a whole, is certainly less high and less intensive than in other European and Central Asian countries. Nevertheless, in Germany, due to a complete lockdown, of course, the business community and workers are in an acute situation of crisis. In other countries, this adds, of course, to the acute crisis of healthcare systems, which prove to be not to have been prepared for such a situation. And by the way, the same is true for Germany as well, but probably less strong than other countries, simply because the country is so big. And I would also say because there is a certain federal decentralized structure of hospitals and of care infrastructure, which is probably different compared to countries which have a more centralized structure, where more has been rationalized in the healthcare sector in the last years. So certainly on the medical side, there are issues which are different depending on the way the healthcare system is organized. But I think what we should focus our attention on is precisely how are the shocks which employers but also employees face addressed by governments and also by the social partners. Maybe on Germany, I can tell you that we have this instrument of short-time work, which has been expanded, and where companies can put their workers on so-called short-time work, which means they would pay only the wages for the time worked effectively. And if this time worked effectively is 0, they pay 0 wages, but they don't have to dismiss the workers. And a kind of short-time compensation money is being paid by the Federal Labor Agency. Fortunately, this Federal Labor Agency has had quite high reserves over the last years, which could be built up, so it can actually financially bear the cost of these very high amounts of short-time labor. So that companies don't have to dismiss the workforce, and at the same time the employees have a guarantee for a continued income, which is of course less than their real wages, but it is decent so that they can actually survive without being afraid of not being able to pay their rent in the next months. There are political discussions because the trade unions, echoed by the labor minister, who is a social democrat, have taken up a request to increase the amount of short-time compensation to be paid. This is a political discussion now taking place. On the other hand, the companies, especially SMEs, have received immediate cash aids to help them overcome sort of the moment without having problems of liquidity. So that's certainly a very important point in this phase of complete lockdown. And the positive signal I can also give you is that our social partners, especially in the metal sector, they have already made the first collective agreement as a kind of crisis corona agreement to take care of the special situation until the end of the year for employers and employees, so that we are in a situation where the social conflict is not too big. Of Of course, the conflict between trade unions and employers is there at the political level when it comes to what is to be paid and how much should be paid. But at the level of the social partners, the relationship is quite all right. So with this, I would like to move to our country cases, and I really would like to thank all colleagues who have agreed to give us their input on what happens in their respective countries. We will proceed in the order which is outlined in the agenda, which was sent to you. And we will also have Marina Moskvina, who will present as the situation in Russia. And we will then also have Yodar Omosov, who will speak about Kyrgyzstan. Last word, as you see on the agenda, Norway, the case of Norway will be presented by our colleague Henrik Munthe. And to Henrik, I have had the secret information that this is a special day for you. It's your birthday. So I would like to say happy birthday to you, Henrik. We're happy that you share your birthday with us today, and we will look forward to your presentation when it's time for that. And we wish you all the best for your next decades in health and lots of pleasure and fun, and without the virus.
Thank you so much.
So having said this, I would now like to turn to Paola. Oh, maybe before doing that, please, all speakers don't speak more than maximum 5 minutes, please. And then when there are questions, those who would like to intervene and ask questions, may I ask you to use the chat and to just say whatever, speak or question or so, put it in the chat, and then I will ask you to intervene. So I will look at the chat all the time. And those who want to speak should say so in the chat function. You will find the sort of speaking bubble on your screens on top in the right-hand corner. And those who would like to speak, please say a word in the chat, and then I have a good order of speakers, and we have an orderly discussion. Right, thank you for this and for listening. And now I turn to Paola Astorri from Confindustria. What happens in Italy? Please give us your presentation, Paola.
Yes, thank you so much, Renate, and thank you, Roberto. So my presentation will today focus on 3 main aspects describing the Italian situation. So we can switch to the next slide. And these aspects actually refer to the measures recently undertaken by the Italian government to support liquidity of Italian companies and support employment. The second aspect refers to the reactions that we expect at European level for managing the phase 2. And finally, some considerations regarding the shift from phase 1 to phase 2. So as regards the first point, we can go to the next slide. This is referred to the very recent initiative of the Italian government, and specifically I'm referring to a decree which has been adopted on 8th of April and which has provided big support in terms of liquidity for all companies, regardless of their size, and also supporting employment. In this case, the decree has injected a considerable amount of financial resources, indicated in a sum of 400 billion euros. And on the other side, we have the reinforcement of the short-time work schemes that already existed, but you know that the Italian government has expanded and has refunded those instruments, which are called in Italy Cassa Integrazione. So we have to take into consideration now these 2 pillars, the measures on liquidity for helping companies to receive cash liquidity, and on the other side, you see the reinforcement of social safety nets. We have some data indicated here. This is a potential number in the sense that considering all the measures undertaken by the government up to today's date, the number of potential beneficiaries of these short-time work schemes are 9.3 million employees. Anyway, we have more recent data. There are some data being recorded until the beginning of April. And on 10th of April, in fact, we have some new elements, and we know that 198,000 requests for short-term work schemes have been filed to National Social Security. So this would refer to about 2.9 million workers of the private sector, of course. So what is our assessment with regard to these measures? Well, of course, it is a positive assessment in the sense that there is the financial resources that have been mobilized by the government are quite huge, and we stress the fact that these kind of help should be continued also for the next months, because you know that the Italian government is enacting decrees in a gradual way. So for the moment, our assessment is of course very positive. We stressed a point with the government, and this refers to the need of simplification, in the sense that we ask for simplified procedures in order that these financial resources, this money, may reach quite quickly and effectively the beneficiaries. So both companies, for what concerns the liquidity, and the employers for what concerns the payment of the social safety nets. I will now switch on to the next slide, which refers to the reaction that we expect at European level. And so we all know that there has been a quite strong debate also on public medias about the different positions of European countries with regard to the possible instruments to be activated. The position of Confindustria there too is to stress the fact that we think that any available instrument at European level should be activated and should be utilized. Specifically, of course, we refer to the European Stability Mechanism. And here we just stress the fact that the conditionality principle should be limited to the spending resources for the management of the health emergency. This is what we have stressed. And of course, then there is the positive, important role of the European Investment Bank, as well as of the SURE program, and of course also of the other instruments that can be activated by the European Central Bank. So all these are important, are significant instruments, but the point is that Confindustria has stressed, as you probably know, the necessity of providing an extraordinary intervention. So these instruments are really important, but we think that the adoption of a further instrument, which is the European Recovery Fund or Eurobonds, should be adopted in order to jointly secure the European interest and in order to prepare the way to relaunch all European economies, which are all interlinked, and of course to support employment. I will now switch to my last slide just to make a comment on the shift from phase 1 to phase 2. Actually, we are presently at the end, let's hope, at the end of phase 1 in Italy. We are starting in these days phase 2, which means the gradual reopening of all the activities that had been interrupted and closed down. This is, of course, a very critical phase. To manage this phase, the Italian government has recently set up a task force formed by high-level experts on social and economic issues, which has the commitment to organize, to build up, and to manage phase 2, which is, of course, of strict importance for Confindustria, for all Italian companies. And so we are working very closely with the government in order to collaborate on this very, very important phase. Just consider that as from the 4th of May in Italy, some economic activities will be restarted. This is very partial, but it starts, so the phase 2 is just starting. And then, of course, we hope that the curve of contagion will not raise up. But very important measures of containment have been adopted. As you know, all Italian companies are applying the protocol on health and safety, which was the sign of the collaboration between Confindustria, trade unions, and the government. And so we think that and we know that a pillar of phase 2 will be the protocol that was undersigned on March. Then finally, we think that it is already important to start imagine phase 3. Of course, this is all virtual, but we have to start imagine how we will manage the end of the crisis. And for the moment, we just can stress the importance of very huge investments, which will have to be made, and this refers, of course, to both public investments and private investments, in order to give to our economy the possibility to recover. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paola. If there are no immediate questions, which I don't see, I would first of all say great hello to IOE President Errol Kiresepi. I hear he's also connected to us here. Errol, are you there?
I'm here, thank you.
Ah, wonderful. Welcome, dear IOE President.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure having you here with us. And
the pleasure is mine.
And now I go straight to Miriam Pinto. Please, 5 minutes, no more. And works also.
Okay.
Hello, Miriam. You have the floor for COE.
Hi, thanks, Renate. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to this webinar. I would like to start with the current situation. Where are we now? The number of confirmed cases are still increasing, although the number of deaths for COVID is now falling, which suggests that it should be the beginning for flattening the curve, which is good, of course. There is a lockdown implemented since mid-March, probably the strictest in Europe. And the state of alarm will probably be extended until 9th of May. But the good news is that children will be able to go out from the next 27th of April. The government is also thinking in different scenarios to go back to normality, but may be different in each region depending on the evolution of the COVID-19. They are talking now about the escalation in 2 phases, summer and the end of the year, for the most affected sectors such as tourism, culture, and leisure. But in any case, everything will depend on the decisions taken by the health ministry. Talking about the labor measures adopted, next slide, please. We are going to be very critical, in fact. On the 12th of March, COE and the main trade unions reached a joint agreement to address extraordinary labor measures to face coronavirus. But what the government has done, and we can say it after 4 weeks, is take this agreement to the social partners and unbalance the proposals to the benefit of the unions. Through 4 royal decree laws, the government has approved disproportionate and unbalanced measures without social dialogue. So what is behind these measures? We really think that the health crisis is being used to introduce deeply ideological elements in line, in fact, with the labor reform that the most extreme partners of the current government wanted. As examples, we have that the unions are being given more and more power to intervene in the company, and greater control is being imposed by the labor inspection. Of course, COE has claimed social dialogue and has made public and notorious his discontent. Next slide, please. Talking about the main labor measures adopted and to make an assessment about them, of course, the first one is the teleworking. I think like everywhere else, it is a priority measure. The company has the duty to implement teleworking whenever it is technically and reasonable possible. The second is the adaptation and reduction of working hours. This is a measure that was in the bipartite agreement, but that the government has developed into a very personal, individual right of the worker. It is an imbalanced measure right now. It offers the worker enormous flexibility to adapt to the exceptional situation of children care, family care, but it will force companies to have great internal organizational flexibility. And remember, we are now thinking about a de-escalate period coming. The third one, and probably the main one, is the short-time work that we call ERTES. This is a measure of short-time work provided in our workers' statute. In the bipartite agreement, we contemplated the use of these ERTES, even proposing better conditions for the unemployment benefits and the exoneration of payments of social contributions by companies. When the government has regulated these ERTES for this COVID situation, it's been with a significant ideological component. So the regulation is based on the preservation of the unemployment rights, exactly the same that we did in the bipartite agreement. Exonerate companies from the payment of contributions, but only if it is a major force ERTE, but linked to a commitment of the company to maintain employment for 6 months since the end of the state of alarm. And this is going to be very difficult for some sectors and companies. The government has taken the opportunity to introduce the figure of the unions in the negotiation of the ERTES by economic reasons. They have prohibited dismissals for reasons related to COVID. And they have used this short-time work scheme to reestablish a deep control by the labor inspection focusing on the causes of the ERTES. The fourth measure is the recoverable paid leave, and I think I'm not going to say anything to keep the time. The next steps, what we are doing now from COE, next slide please. We need to influence the amendments of the royal decrees in Parliament. We need to change those royal decrees. We need to change those measures, at least some of them. We need to prepare the de-escalation. This is a main thing we have to do. How? Well, drawing up several sectoral prevention plans to recover the activity in a safe way. We have done it already in construction, metal, paper, automobile, etc. But we have a serious problem with the provision of the personal protection equipment because there are no in the market, we don't have tests either. And second, participating in the social dialogue tables that have been open for this de-escalation. The business proposals in this sense are to extend the ERTES by major force for the sectors or companies that cannot recover the activity immediately. It is the case of the tourism, transport, hospitality sector, etc. To facilitate the transition from a major force ERTE to an ERTE based on economic reasons, to introduce flexibility in some working conditions, and to achieve measures to support self-employed and SMEs, because we have 3.5 million of self-employed, 87% of Spanish companies are micro SMEs, and so they need liquidity, longer tax moratoriums, etc. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, dear Miriam. This was very interesting and also unfortunate that the government is taking really measures which are opposed and which don't listen to the needs of the companies. Just for info, I forgot to say this at the beginning. In Germany, we are also discussing, speaking about working time, we are also discussing extending the margins and the maximum working times allowed as during the crisis, not to change the legislation completely, but during the crisis to introduce the possibility for higher number of working hours per week exceptionally. So I have a question from Johan Christos. to Paola and Miriam, have you assessed how much of the short-time work subsidies can be covered by the SURE plan when you expect it to be operational in your national systems? Well, I mean, the SURE hasn't been adopted yet, so it's probably a bit speculative. But I'm wondering, do you have any very short answer to that in one sentence? Maybe first Miriam and then Paola.
No, not really, not really.
And Paola?
No, neither we have still. No, we don't have any specific data at the moment on that.
Maybe it's a bit too early because I don't think the modalities are really out yet. I mean, I know there's a draft regulation, but we wait for it every minute to look at it. But that's certainly something to follow up. Thanks, Christos. Right, now time is running, really. So I would like to go on to the next speaker, and that's Janusz Pietkiewicz, Vice President of Employers of Poland. Janusz, you are with us, I hope. You have the floor. Welcome to our conference.
Yes, hello. I put the microphone on.
Janusz?
Hello to everybody.
Hello, Janusz.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Yes.
Okay, good, great. Hello also to the President, to Errol, because I would like to mention in my short speech also the help which he received from the IOE and personally from the President. But let me start, because all our presentation will be a little bit the same. So what are the instruments and measurements which we succeeded in consultation with the government to implement to save jobs and to avoid drastic effects of the coronavirus. So let me start from the general issues. Millions of businesses in 210 countries all over the world. So for the first time in the whole world, we have the same tendencies and we have the same problems, regardless it is a micro businesses or small companies or large corporations. So everybody, all these entities bears drastic consequences in private life, in family life, in social and political life. And that shows us very clearly what kind of world we will be living in next weeks, when the virus will be going out a little bit. So we cannot give up, and we have to prepare all the instruments, nationally, regionally, and internationally, to be sure that the second wave of the virus, because I think it is unexpected, it will come very soon. So we have to understand that it's also only a starting point to make our economies and society more resilient. That's why it is so important that we work now together and we share experiences and we think about the same tendencies all over the world, especially in Europe. So we cannot give up, and we have to understand what does it mean solidarity. That is the short introduction of the things which happened in Poland. Because when you look now back in one month's time, how different governments were treating the threat of virus. Look, in England, for instance, how was the Boris Johnson's attitude to this, and how it went. Look at Sweden now, the Swedish model, and look at Spain, Italy, and also in Poland. So a lot of governments just ignored the real threat of that virus. And those who understood, they were the employers, employees, and the social partners were afraid of the consequences which will go in the market. And that happened also in Poland. When they started social partners in the Social Dialogue Council about the mid of March to prepare the support from the government and to convince the government to give special instruments to save jobs and to protect employees. So it was very difficult to convince them that it's really a serious problem. At that time, the government lived in the projection of elections of the new president, which is scheduled in May, and the political issues were much more important than the real social and economic issues. So when we convinced finally that the Minister of Labor to work together in the Social Dialogue Council, we prepared a special anti-crisis shield, anti-crisis pact, which looked very professional. And in one night, from Friday to Saturday, on 27th and 28th of March, unexpectedly, the parliamentary club of the ruling party implemented at 3 o'clock in the morning 2 clauses which were a real unexpected attack on independence and autonomy of Social Dialogue Council in Poland, and which changes all the standards which we are used to in the past times. So it was an attack of independence, of freedom of association, and in these 2 small clauses implemented by the same in the night, I said, from 27 to 28. So the government got a power to dismiss any member of the Social Dialogue Council. Member means representative of all trade unions or employers. There are 3 trade unions organization, 5 employers, at will, without any discretion. So if the government says that this organization, the representatives of that, work against the line of government, so the prime minister can, without any explanation, dismiss it from the work on the Social Dialogue Council. Of course, it was against any rules internationally. It was against the.
There's 1 minute left. Time is running relentlessly. Time is running.
So now coming to the conclusion. So then we immediately asked for help internationally. We asked Erol Kirisetti and IOE. We asked the International Labour Organization, social partners in Brussels, to support our fight to stop this kind of action during the fight, during the combat on crisis, various crises. So we succeeded partially only, but we are grateful very much for IOD, especially personally Erol and Roberto and Matthias, Renate, for really precious help and support just to maintain the role of Social Dialogue Council and maintain the role of consultations and autonomic consultation between trade unions and employers. In that case, we just succeeded to implement in Poland 3 anti-crisis shields. One was uploaded 1st of April, second 18th of April, and now waiting for the 3rd one. I would like to say that thanks to the first anti-crisis shield, 894,097 requests were implemented by the government. So that shows really the scope of the help. 225,000 also support co-finances of the employees, and so on and so on and so on. That's why it shows that the solidarity and actions and the consequence in the consultations with the government is all the instruments, political instruments, can make a good result. I would like at the end show also that the solidarity in Europe, when we talk about social partners in Brussels, and SME United, Business Europe, CEP, and also the Economic and Social Committee, shows that when we are in this very difficult situation, so we have to count very much on our friends and partners in the whole Europe and also through the IOE in the world. So that gives us the strength and that gives the support and gives us the possibility to really combat and to really win for the sake of growth, decent work, and the jobs, creation of jobs.
Thank you very much, Janusz. And I think really the most significant event, as you described it, is that this attack of the government on the social partner organizations has been the organizations have responded by joining forces, and I know that both in Business Europe and in IOE we have supported your complaints with regard to the ILO and also with regard to the European Commission, and just to give a signal to the government that this is not possible, that they must not act like that. But the positive thing is also that the organizations like Employers of Poland and Leviathan, and also the chambers and the SME organizations have joined forces, the crafts and SMEs, which are members of WEAPME in Brussels, or SME United, they're now called. So that was a very positive action, and it's very important to note that this how a virus can actually infect social partnership, which is really very dangerous. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we move to Croatia. Bizerka Sladovic. What are the measures in Croatia? Again, 5 minutes, yeah?
Thank you, Renate. First of all, I would like to thank Roberto, Matthias, and Pierre for inviting us here. I will start with measures, with figures that every Croatian family is following every day, because the eventual easing of measures of confinement would depend on these numbers. So in past 24 hours, there's been only 10 new cases, 0 new deaths, 60, I'm sorry, I cannot see this, okay. 62 new recoveries, and unemployment has stopped or fell to 0 new cases in 24 hours. On your right-hand side, you can see the graph showing that the mortality per 1 million inhabitants in Croatia is relatively low. Going to the Croatian government measures, they arrived in 2 stages. The first stage, by 25th of March, a total of 63 economic measures has been introduced. But in the second phase, there are measures designed to ease the burden for the private sector. Those were adopted on the 3rd of April. All those government measures can be actually divided in 3 categories: expenditure measures, fiscal measures, and labor market measures. So starting with expenditure measures, there were payouts of subsidies amounting to the minimum wage per workers in company for difficulties. But there were some eligibility criteria. The businesses must experience a drop in revenue for at least 20%, keeping their employees in employment for a period of at least 2 months for each month they received that aid, and they didn't lay off more than 40% of their staff for micro businesses, 20% of their staff for small businesses, or 10% of their staff for big companies. In the second phase, the amount of government paid wages was augmented from 3,250 kunas to 4,000 kunas. It went from 433 to 533 euros. What was then done at the request of the Croatian Employers Association, we were successful in our lobbying, so even the employers who laid off the workers prior to the government measures, if they committed to keeping them, were allowed to benefit from the government measures. When it comes to tax measures, the government adopted 3 months deferrals for payment of taxes. Also with eligibility criteria that the businesses did not have pre-existing tax debt and experiencing a drop in revenue of at least 20% on a monthly or quarterly basis. So after the situation normalizes, a period of 24 months will be allowed for the repayment of deferred obligations with no interest charged. Again, HUP was lobbying, and together with some other associations, we obtained a concession from the government. VAT payments will be charged only after the invoices have been charged. This might sound like a small thing, but in Croatia, we actually have a situation. If you issue an invoice with VAT in it, you have to pay the government first, regardless of the fact, have you received the money for your invoice? So this has been changed after our initiative. When we come to the key labor market measures, Croatian Health Insurance Institute and the Croatian Pension Insurance Institute are to cover the deferred payments, subsidization of net minimum wages for 400,000 workers for 3 months in order to preserve their jobs. There is a possible extension.
One minute.
Okay.
Just sum up, please. Thank you.
Okay. Nevertheless, due to the regardless of these Croatian government measures, some 20,000 jobs have been lost, but the trend of layoffs has stopped. And at the end, what we would like to offer as a word of caution or lesson learned, our forecast by International Monetary Fund is a 9% decline in Croatian GDP for 2020. And no exit strategy has been foreseen in Croatia, but this crisis also offers a learning opportunity. As many of our economic experts have been warning us for some time now, Croatia can and should relieve itself of its dependency on tourism, which is now hard hit, and focus more on manufacturing sector and food production. So instead of saying thank you for your attention, I will like to share a thought of encouragement and say, this too shall pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bizerka. That's very interesting and especially very relieving for you to know that Croatia is doing pretty well also regarding the death toll and trying to get the medical side of the crisis addressed properly. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I now pass on to Henrik Munthe from Norway. How is Corona dealt with in Norway? And again, 5 minutes. Thank you, Henrik.
Thank you, and thank you so much for your kind words, because it's my birthday today, as you revealed to all the participants, Renate. Okay, when it comes to the situation in Norway, we are, of course, it's been a shock for the entire society, for the business community, but compared to other countries, we are in a quite lucky position. As per today, there are 182 persons dead, and at present, there are 145 in hospital. That is a small number compared to other, but Norway is a small country. We have 5 million people living here. And as you see on the screen, we did not have a full-scale lockdown as in many other countries. We have avoided that, but all the schools and kindergarten, they have closed, but this is sort of exit strategy. The first one opens today, that the kindergarten and also the youngest pupils, they are now back in school. And we have imposed social distancing rules. But if you leave the house and go outside, the situation is not as dramatic as you can see on television, like in Italy and Spain and so on. There are people moving around, but the activity is very reduced compared to normal times. We have quarantine introduced for all people arriving from outside. And we have, as I said, not a full-scale lockdown, but we do not have that relaxed attitude as Sweden has imposed. They have very flexible rules compared to most other countries and also Norway. what has come as a sort of a shock in Norway, that is the very, very rapid growth in unemployment, and that is people out of work for a limited period of time, partially or entirely, and they are temporarily laid off. And the situation is very dramatic in a Norwegian context. And it's now up to 15% of the workforce are not working at the time being. And that is very, very high compared to what we are used to, where the unemployment rate is normally 3–4%. So that is quite dramatic. At the next slide, there you will see that the economic support packages, that is very similar to what has been introduced and presented previously, what you have done. So we have a loan guarantee scheme, and we have that general one, and we have also one for specific sectors, particularly the airlines. They have big trouble. That is the case all over the world, I guess. And we have now also a compensation scheme for loss of turnover. And that has been put in place very, very rapidly. And contrary to what you reported, Miriam, from Spain and Janusz in Poland, the social partners have been very close to the government. Some of my colleagues, they have more or less been moving offices and worked within the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Labor. So we have been very, very close on this. And now we are afraid that this new the new compensation scheme, that is could be misused. We are afraid that there will be some crooks and criminals trying to get hold of some of the money coming from that. So that might be a challenge, but we are trying to do that as best as we can. And there is also a quite heated debate if companies receiving money from this scheme, should they be allowed to pay dividends to their shareholders? If they pay, and so the result was that they are so, because there are some taxes in Norway. You have to pay even if you are going very badly. The annual turnover is going down, but it's linked to the value of your, for instance, your property. You have to pay based on that as well. So then you need to have a dividend in order to pay that sort of tax. And my last slide is on the temporary layoff regulation, and that is very similar, as far as I can understand, to what you said about the situation in Germany, Renate. That we have legislation saying that if you can lay off people temporarily for maximum half a year, then the employer has to pay the 2 first weeks, and then the state will pay a reduced salary for up to 26 weeks. This has been changed now, as you can see, that it's not the employer has to pay only for 2 days, and then the state take over, and then the employee will receive a salary up to a ceiling for up to half a year. And now, yesterday, LO, the main trade union, the Confederation in Norway, and also NHO asked the government to extend this period to 1 year, 52 weeks instead of 26. That was done in this financial crisis in 2008 and 9. So that will probably be the result, but that is up to the parliament to decide. So hopefully we will recover, and I just want to echo what you said, Biserka. We should be able to get through this, but it will be, even for a rich country like Norway, this is really a dramatic situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very, very good presentation on a country which is well, not hit very much, but has very good social partnership traditions, which are actually now surviving as well. Just a question: when you say temporary layoff, it means the people keep their employment contract. It's just that they don't work. Is that correct? or are
That
they?
is correct. They keep their working contract. Some are laid off 100% and some only, for instance, 50%. This is very widespread now. And for instance, in NHO, in our Confederation, there are some people, and in more sectoral organization, there are many people who are temporarily laid off now because the members are really hard, for instance, in the tourism and the airline industry and so on, and they don't receive the fees they should, and they foresee that they will be very troublesome the years to come. So we have, I have colleagues who have been laid off for first period is, I think it's 2 months, but that can be extended.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for this information. Right, now I would like to go to the next speaker, Chris de Meester from Belgium. And Chris is a specialist on this COVID issue. He's also the chair of the Health and Safety Working Group in Business Europe, because he's actually also in medical terms, he is quite a specialist of this virus diseases and health and safety in the workplace. So Chris, you have the floor. Thanks for joining. Chris?
Yes, hello, Renate. Yes, sorry for joining you a little bit later, but I was still busy in another video conference with Business Europe on the European Commission's guidance on COVID-19 for the recovery, or for the businesses that are soon to start up their activities again. So also there, the European Commission, on the basis of a document made by the European Agency for Health and Safety, is working on something. And now I'm going to try to share my screen with you. Okay.
I don't see anything yet. Maybe Monique can help?
Wait. I think it's going to work now. What is this program called?
GoToMeeting.
Okay.
Yeah, on my screen you are presenter.
Yeah, but I have to open my system preferences and the program is not in the list.
Do you want me to try and download it?
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. I will already start. Yeah.
Order and ask Marina to come in first while you sort out your technical problems. Would that be all right?
Yeah, that's a solution too. Thank you.
Okay, so if I now may ask, maybe you can sort it out in the background, Chris, together with Monique. And I would like to welcome, okay, Monique? And I would like to welcome Marina Mosquina from RSPP. Hello, Marina. And we look forward to your information on the measures in Russia. Are you there? You have to switch on your mic.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm so glad to meet everybody in such unusual circumstances. And the time shows that COVID is not only a huge health problem, but it has unprecedented influence on global economic development. To start, I would like to say some figures about Russian situation. As for today, the number of cases in Russia is some more than 50,000. Deaths, 456, and nearly 4,000 recoveries. So I can say that these figures are not as dramatic as in other countries, European countries particularly, but still we are growing very fast. And that's why we have to think about the measures, how to prevent this spread of this disease. And Russia, of course, would be happy not to follow such a global trend, but unfortunately it's difficult to avoid, and we should seek the best ways out using all possible instruments and showing solidarity all around the globe with each other. And considering the IOE motto of speaking in one consolidated voice, on March 2020, 4 largest Russian business associations, the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Business Russia, and Opora России, have jointly addressed Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin on the need for urgent additional state support measures. In order to prevent mass bankruptcies, growth of unemployment and reduction of tax revenues, business associations proposed the following. First, not individual sectors of the economy should be recognized as a victim of the coronavirus, but enterprises of all economic activities with the formation of different groups are eligible for all kinds of supporting measures depending on the specifics of a particular sector or region. Second is to radically reduce taxation on payroll and to provide companies that faced forced suspension of operations with subsidies to pay 2/3 of average monthly wages for the entire period of non-working days regime. The third is to pay individual entrepreneurs without hired workers a monthly allowance not lower than the minimum wage for the period of forced downtime, exempting them from paying fixed contributions. Next is to extend the self-employed regime to all regions starting from May the 1st by establishing a single tax rate of 1%. Currently, the self-employed pay tax at a rate of 4% when working with individuals and 6% when working with legal entities. And then consider, just a moment, and then consider the possibility of exempting companies from tax payments as well as so then for the period of the acute phase of the crisis, reduce the period of warning employees about upcoming dismissal and the period of payment to employees if they are not employed. In addition, business associations propose to freeze or reduce the material responsibility of the employer for violation of labor laws in case of dismissal or non-payment of wages to employees. Considering the fact that companies spend a lot of resources for measures to prevent COVID consequences for its employees, in some companies such expenses are coming to billions of rubles, it makes sense to return up to 30% of accident insurance premiums to businesses in order to compensate such expenses. To support companies that are able to continue their operations under current conditions and to stimulate demand, RSPP, Business Russia, Opora России, and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry propose to simplify access to external financing for such companies, including by softening reserve requirements for banks and granting the right not to take into account the results of revaluation of collaterals when their value drops. Business associations consider it necessary to introduce the term of validity of the above support measures at least 6 months. A part of the joint steps and statements, each of the Russian companies is developing its own policy and strategy aimed against COVID consequences and challenges. And of course, keeping social peace and joint actions with social partner is the core to establish a proper resistance to the social and economic consequences brought by COVID. Just a brief overview on what RSPP is doing in this respect. In April, RSPP had established a coordination council on COVID prevention. President of RSPP, Mr. Shokhin, is leading the council. And the Russian Tripartite Commission on the Regulation of Social Labor Relations, where RSPP, FNPR, that is the Russian largest trade union, and the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection of Russian Federation are leading the social partners, had released a joint statement on the problem. Next, RSPP had opened a web page, Anti-Crisis, where all information about business response and government response to the COVID is published, also as news from the RSPP global and country partners, that is FNPR, IOE, ILO, OECD, G20, B20, etc. RSPP is collecting best practices of social responsible actions of its members and publishing it on its web page for public knowledge. The list of companies that have already announced their own charitable initiatives is huge. And among them, the charity actions of medical equipment and medical protection gear purchasing hospital construction in the regions of presence, housing for doctors in the hotels, and hot meals for those at the working place. Direct donations for the regional budget funds established for COVID prevention. Development of test systems to detect infection. The reprofiling of clinics for testing for COVID, hospitalization and treatment of patients. Production of protective equipment. Government by itself is also undertaking measures of business support, putting a special focus to the most vulnerable economic branches, like hotels, tourism, aviation, and so on, individual entrepreneurs, small and medium enterprises. Among such measures are suspending of external checks, postponing of tax payments deadlines, postponing of payment of insurance premiums for micro enterprises, crediting with 0% to keep employees on board, moratorium on the initiation of bankruptcy proceedings. In total, Russia is ready to spend on this current moment more than 2% of its GDP to cope with COVID consequences. The sum can be increased depending on the situation. Thank you for your attention, and I wish everybody good health.
Thank you very much, Marina. And let's hope that you can contain the numbers, which really look very positive, the numbers of infections in Russia. So thank you very much. And also for the information on all that the Federation is doing and working together with the government. So there also I see that cooperation is better and not as tense as it is in Poland or in Spain. Good. Chris de Mister, have you managed to solve the technical problem? Because then now time is really running. So your 5 minutes are on. Chris, you have the floor. Chris?
Okay. So for the presentation, I depend on Monique because I cannot. Can you hear me? Because I hear some sounds in my ear. Okay.
Yeah,
so the actual situation.
Chris,
yeah.
I have
Yes?
to get it from the email because I was presenting, so I could not pick it up from the email.
I will start. So the situation actually right now is we have around 40% of drop down in economic activities. Over 1 million people, 1.1 million.
Was that 20 or 40?
40% drop down.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes.
And slightly over 1 million people are in what we call technical unemployment. That's some of the social security, some of the securities we have. We also used it in 2008, 2009, but of course it costs tons of money. So it means people are not laid off; they are still under contract with their employer, but it's technical unemployment. So their unemployment fee, it's not really an unemployment fee, but it's paid by the government. That of course helps to absorb shocks, but we cannot sustain that situation for long. The reason of the drop down in the economic activities is the fact that we are essentially in a semi-lockdown, which means that we have a distinction between what is called crucial sectors and essential services and the rest. All of them can, in theory, remain active, but the essential ones, they have an obligation of effort to live up to the public health and hygiene measures, meaning social distancing, telework, and taking care of people, quick reaction to people showing symptoms. So for the essential services, it's an obligation of effort. For all the rest, it is an obligation of result, which means if you can, in other branches of the economy that are not considered essential, like automobile, a lot of the manufacturing sectors that are not essential to food production or healthcare, etc. For them, it means if you cannot work with a distance of 1.5 meters, you have to stop your activities. That is the actual situation. Where are we now? Sorry, the presentation is in French, but I will just explain simply, straight on. where are we now? We are Friday, there will be a new National Security Council, and they will decide upon whether we enter a next phase. And another National Safety Council is scheduled for the 3rd of May. So I think this Friday they will prepare the population, but we will remain in this condition until the 3rd of May. And then the National Safety Council will decide that we will still live with some extra measures imposed by public health hygiene. It is, we will still live with the telework, the social distancing and the other hygiene measures, but it will become an obligation of effort for everybody, not an obligation of result. In order to get to that decision and to prepare the population, we as the social partners, last week on Thursday, we were requested to give an opinion and advice on a kind of national COVID corona guidance for a startup of the economy. That was prepared by a group of people that is called the Economic Risk Management Group under the presidency of the governor of the National Bank. They had prepared some document. It was sent to us. I started to work on it on Thursday. Friday morning, the Minister of Labor said, your mission has changed. I don't want your opinion. It's up to you to draft the national guidance. So forget the thing from the bank, from the risk management group. You have to draw up the guidance. And you, that is a small group of experts from social partners together with our president and the secretary of our National Health and Safety at Work Council. So basically, since Thursday morning until now, I've been working around 18 to 20 hours a day. And we have a document now that will soon, in a couple of hours, be stamped by the minister. And that is our national corona guidance document that will serve for the next phase, because our National Safety Council wanted something of quality that people can trust, that we have identified a whole series of good measures to make sure that people can work, go to shops, etc., have services in safe conditions. So that is the situation. So a lot of weight was put on our shoulders, but I think we've prepared something useful. Our members are very happy because we provide all the openings that are necessary. And actually what we did is we did merge the obligations coming from public health epidemiology. We merged them with the obligations coming from health and safety at work, risk assessment, etc. The slight difference is health and safety, the ultimate responsibility is with the employer. Here we will, for a couple of weeks or months even, we will still be in a situation where some direct responsibility is also on the workers and on every civilian, because it's also of public order that they follow up the public, the social distancing and the hygiene measures. That is from the point of view of safe working, or go back to work in safety. And then, of course, we have a whole series of other measures that have to help businesses to overcome this difficult period. Extended systems for work, extended working hours systems, much more flexible rules for posting of workers, for sharing workers between parts of the economy that are not active and parts that are active. So this is labor market and employability related measures. There is more to that, but I will try to give you later on a short presentation with all the bullet points in English. And then, of course, we have also a series of measures from the fiscality point of view. So longer deadlines for company taxation, for VAT, temporary suspension of bankruptcy, companies that have debts get also some relief measures. So there is also a whole supportive system there. But the most important mechanism for our business is this temporary, the technical unemployment measure. But of course, as I said, this cannot be we cannot maintain this for months and months. That's why the next phase is so crucial. Of course, everything depends upon the National Safety Council. If they consider that we are over the peak, then they will decide we can go to the next phase with still in place all those obligations, distancing, hygiene, but as an obligation of effort. But if tomorrow we have again 300 people dead per day, then probably they will not go to the next phase. But right now it's the 5th consecutive day that the numbers are improving. So my guess is 3rd of May we will go to the next phase, and then the work we did with the national COVID guidance is of extreme importance. Also interesting to know is this will be sent to the sectors, to the branch associations as a piece of information, and with the instruction, use this document for those who are already working to maybe fine-tune and improve your measures. And for those who have to start up, this is your source of inspiration. If necessary, give it a more branch-colored approach. So replace the images, make the measures more sector-specific. If you think it's good enough, you can also directly send it to your members, the companies, and so they can use it as a guidance to make sure that the work can resume in safe conditions. That's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And also we look forward to a short summary in English, which we can then share on the IOE website as we do with the other presentations. I had a question by Christos. You see it in the chat. Do you think that the new standards for health and safety at the workplace will have to go beyond the emergency and reopening period?
Yeah,
I suppose, yeah.
Question. Very good question, and I've tried to explain this many times already, also in the previous meeting with Business Europe. We are not talking about new or more specific health and safety at work measures. Not. They are exactly the same as before. What has changed is there is an extra layer of measures. Those measures are not health and safety at work measures. They are public health. They are from the hygiene and epidemiology point of view, but they have to be implemented also at the workplace level. So I try to make a clear distinction. Health and safety, nothing has changed. You still have to protect your worker against all the normal risks, but there is an additional layer of measures imposed. So my guess is this additional layer will continue for, I guess, still a couple of months.
Okay, well, in Germany, there are forecasts that it may even last well into 2021. But I think the distinction you make is very important, because health and safety in the workplace refers to whatever machine, everything that's specific to the workplace, but not outside the workplace. Whereas these measures apply everywhere in the public space, but also in the workplace, and that's probably the difference. Thanks a lot.
That's why it's so important from the point of view of responsibility. The employer is responsible for health and safety at work, is responsible for making sure the extra layer is implemented, but the workers are also responsible for obeying and living up to the extra layer that is imposed on them.
Yes, exactly. Good. So thank you very much, Chris. And again, the presentation in English will be on the IOE website once you have been able to do it. I would now like to move on to our last colleagues who would like to take the floor, and that is the colleagues from Kyrgyzstan. We have Yodar Omasov and also Farkut Takirov. And you will speak with an interpreter from Russian into English. Could I just ask you to also please stick to the 5 minutes so that we don't have to do longer than foreseen. So please, Yodar or Farkut, please, you have the floor. Who would like to start?
Thank you very much. I will speak in English. Hello, everybody. I hope you are in good health. Greeting from the heart of.
Who are you? You are Farkut?
I am Farkut. I am Farkut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Thanks, Farkut. Yes.
Greeting from the heart of Central Asia, from the Kyrgyz Republic. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share the best practices between members of IOE, how we could support and rebuild our economy through enterprise development. Unfortunately, our chairman couldn't connect to this meeting due to technical reasons, so I will represent our organization. My name is Farkut. I am the executive director of the JIA Business Association, which is one of the biggest employers organizations in the Kyrgyz Republic. Like other countries, we also faced many problems and the limitations from the COVID-19, especially problems related to entrepreneurs and the employment. It has been a month since the first cases of COVID was recorded in our country, and today around 600 cases were recorded. According to the economy, the most affected sectors in our country are tourism, light industry, constructions, and the trade and the services. There are working only agricultural complex, enterprises supplying foods, pharmacies, and the state services. Starting from the first day of the emergency situation, our association has taken a number of risk assessments and measures and prepared an action plans. Targeted actions taken for our members. The first is enhancing information support about government's decision to support the business. Also bring the issues of entrepreneurs to the government, which impeded business development. The second is organizing a social project among our members within the framework of which we could fund raised for anti-plague kits for doctors, and the foods were distributed for vulnerable people. And the last is developing online platform where we have organized several round tables between government bodies and the entrepreneurs, where we issued our suggestions and the measures. As association, we prepared about 50 business support proposals, and we so far discussion with our government about financial support, loan restructuring, and the recalculation of loans issued in US dollars, and the tax and other facilitations. Unfortunately, not all measures have been taken by our government today. Just recently, our president approved the following tax breaks for business, deferral and the installment plan for tax debit till October. Legal entities will extend the deadline for submitting tax reports, and the tax service will not fine or charge penalties for non-payment of taxes. Now we are waiting for the second business support program of government, where we asked to give a permission to certain sectors of economy, like light industry, constructions, where more workers are possible. Other big problems is the return of migrants from Russia and Kazakhstan. Unemployment grows due to business restriction today. So we concentrate on promoting interest of our members today. My speech is that. I would like to thank you for all attention, and I want to conclude by the next words. Hard times create strong men, strong men create good times. The patience in these difficult times for all of us, take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Farkut, for this presentation. And so we have made quite a tour of Europe and Central Asia, and I would like to thank you very, very much. Before we conclude, I have two questions. One question from Mile. Is there any exit plan, economic recovery predictions? Well, my answer to that, Mile, is not yet, because people keep saying this is still the beginning of the pandemic, and we really don't know yet how long we will have to keep up the restrictions. And I think this will be the case in most countries. And also, I think it's too early to make any pre-forecasts. I mean, we know that the IMF has made a very negative forecast. Maybe it will be better, maybe it will be even worse, but we are not yet in a situation to make concrete exit plans, although everybody is waiting for them, also psychologically, but it's not really yet the moment. I also had a remark from Janusz, directed to Henrik, who would like to have more details on the crime regulation issue concerning co-funding, transparency, and better examples of the cooperation between the social partner representatives with the ministry, just to also to, I guess you would like to have some ammunition for your discussion, political discussion with the Polish government, which is not very positive on social partners nowadays. So maybe you can also continue the discussion on a bilateral level, or also via IOE, if Henrik would like to share some more examples with all of us, which could be shared on the webpage of IOE. So, colleagues, are there any further questions to the speakers? I don't see any on the chat. So, but what I see is it's already 3:30, so we are just in time. We have filled our time actually very, very densely with a lot of very, very good information. And I would like to thank all of you who have contributed to this. Pierre is rightly informing us through the chat that the conference has been recorded, and so that the information is not lost. And that the presentations will be made available on the IOE COVID-19 business response platform afterwards. Maybe Pierre, you can share the link to this platform afterwards with all the participants who have been there. And again, I would like to thank Pierre and Matthias and Roberto and Rita, Maria, all those who are here, and all colleagues who have participated for their active participation. We still have 61, which is really a huge record, a wonderful participation. And so maybe we can do these kind of exercises regularly and share experiences from different countries with our IOE member organizations from Europe and Central Asia. And with this, I look to Roberto. I saw you on the camera with a nice picture a second ago. Did you want to come in?
No,
maybe?
just to say goodbye. Nothing more to say. You've done all the things.
Thanks
Thank you
for that.
Thank you,
Again,
Renate.
thank you to IOE for organizing this really very, very informative exchange. And thank you to everybody. Monique, thanks a lot to you and to all colleagues. And I wish all of you to stay healthy and in good spirits, not only physically, but also psychologically, which is quite a challenge. And I would like to say bye-bye and see you and hear you soon. Thank you very much. And the meeting is closed. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Mulțumesc, Renate.